Okay, do we have any debate on this paper? No. Okay. Then it was recommended that the Scrutiny Committee comment on the proposals within the report. I have noted down, so we've had a good discussion. Most of our questions were clarifying or understanding. The only points I've put for us to specifically recommend is that if young people are a focus, can we state that clearly as an objective? It was there's some further discussion potentially regarding what we're agreeing to as developers setting out what they want early. So maybe that's a discussion part. It was just a recommendation to consider that. And asset management, we're going to come back to us on whether we have any other similar contracts. Were there any other points that I've missed that we specifically needed to put forward? No, okay. That's all.
Well, I thought we just heard the leader say that it was important to map out post the cabinet decision, the next stages of the governance process for actually how we interact and establish the ongoing sort of understanding of this project. And also the things that are different that we're being asked to look at as part of the development agreement, which I think most of us, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but sort of the essence of what we were talking about this evening. If the leader's happy, that sounds like a good step.
That's a very, yes, I think the way I'd phrased it was making sure that that we do review that the ideas that are being put forward in the draft development delivery plan, that we're mindful throughout of what impact that may or may not have on the financial model, but that we also make sure that we are mindful of the wider social impacts and values and the other objectives that we're looking at as we have discussions about any adjustments within the plan. And having a schedule, a worked out sort of joint review plan with the development partner, should we decide to appoint them next Monday, will be a sensible and pragmatic way of doing that.
Many thanks. Okay, so with your permission, we shall move on to the next item on our agenda, which is Q3 Finance and Performance Monitoring Report. I'm aware that there were some issues this time round because there were apologies. You may all leave, and I forgot to pause to let you all go. I just carried on and let you all stare at me like rabbits in the headlights.
I do not.
It's slightly funny. She's on the list going on my everything. Okay, Q3 monitoring report. So I'm aware that the last session there were a huge amount of additional questions that were submitted to officers, and it caused some issues. And I'm aware that as a result of the questions not being answered, the meeting didn't go as well as it could have. So you've all done a fabulous job up until now, and it's all worked wonderfully well. So it was just a thought through discussion with officers as well, that perhaps we look at how we can best prevent that happening in future. Councillor Cutler?
My question is, who did the questions come from? Was it from the panel or from outside the panel?
From outside the panel.
Because in a way, they ought to be asked at the scrutiny meeting. The idea was for the performance panel to ask the questions and do the deep dive, and then and Councillor Godfrey did raise at that meeting the fact that it's not public. And so in a way, the questions from people off the panel ought to be at scrutiny in public. Now, whether we'd end up with quite the number in that case, it would be slightly different because there wouldn't be written questions. So for me, that would be the approach. We say, I know it goes back to not public. Well, you could still publish it for all members, the paper, but actually the questions can only be from the panel. Is that an option?
So the original theory behind the performance panel was that it took those discussions so that it could be done diligently away from in public. But my understanding was that there was a suggestion also that maybe we should ask a few questions on it in public at scrutiny, which felt to me like it was being double done. So I wondered if we could have just an offline discussion about how that works, how we prevent it, where the questions come to, where they don't, just to completely iron out the process again. Just wanted to ask the panel about that. Councillor?
Well, Chair, up until last time, it worked really well. We've been doing, and it's not about not doing it in public. We were doing a 2-hour session for you, so that you're not here until 1 o'clock in the morning. So we go through everything, and everyone has a chance to ask questions who's on the panel. The member who asked questions outside of that was offered the opportunity by me as the chair that if they wanted to ask any questions, I was happy to put them into our batch of questions. That did not happen. And the downside for the panel last time was that we did not have answers to the questions in advance. And you'll see from the minutes that there are many questions not answered still. And so we've not actually fulfilled the process for you at scrutiny to know the question and the answer, because we don't have the answer at this point. So we fell between sort of two stools, as it were, because we didn't do it as normal and give you the report that you and other scrutiny panel members can look at and go, yes, they've reviewed it. And also those questions never came to any of us on the panel. We never saw them. And so this report is much weaker than those that we brought to scrutiny before on the areas, because we haven't been able to answer everything. We had good discussion on those that we could on the day, but not everything. So we've sort of we're questioning what was actually working quite effectively before, and everyone had the chance to participate as a panel member, so that when you come to scrutiny or indeed to cabinet, those other questions could be asked by any other councillor at all, not those on the scrutiny or the panel.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a slightly separate thing that wasn't quite connected with those questions, which was, and I think with Councillor Godfrey being new to the performance panel at the time, was the fact that it wasn't clear that, and partly it's almost proves the point today, that, if you have a very long scrutiny meeting and have that as the last agenda item, there isn't really the incentive to ask if anybody else has got questions, because there's not going to be any public here, because it's the very last item on the agenda. And that somewhere along the line, that because we're doing the deep dive in private, which is effective, really effective, we still need that opportunity and make it really clear that there is the opportunity to ask questions on it at scrutiny, because that public facing element of it wasn't that clear. But I think Yes, your suggestion that we discuss it perhaps elsewhere would be a good one at this time of the night.
So we've always had the opportunity to ask questions. Councillor Horrell's always introduced the report. We've always had the ability to ask questions publicly of that report or of the panel if we wish to. So that's always been there. I'm also aware that the timeframes around when the questions are submitted to officers and the response time, sometimes they're struggling to respond to all of those questions in time, which is why I just think we need just an offline discussion about, okay, because I'm aware this panel's evolved over time and we just need to put in some of the specific processes around it. If you're happy to just have that conversation separately. Okay. With that in mind, I'd like to thank you all for meeting again. Noting that you didn't feel it was quite as productive as it has been previously. And I thank you for the report and pass to Councillor Horrell to recommend that to us. Thank you.
Well, Chair, the performance panel minutes are before everyone. The questions that we tabled amongst the panel members, either in advance or on the day, are detailed. You'll see the actions there for us to follow up with you as the chair regarding the issue we had last time. And you'll see there are a number of things that are still outstanding, just simply because of the way that the process worked last time. But otherwise, Chair, this is as we would normally recommend to you. The other important factor to note is that the leader was in attendance, and we raised with him a handful of the new measures that accompany the new council plan in terms of the metrics, and we suggested one or two should be adapted, and they're detailed in the minutes, and the leader very kindly said he would review that with officers and come back to us regarding the suggestions we've made. Thank you, Chair.
Many thanks, Councillor Horrell. Councillor Godfrey.
Although only a new boy to the performance panel, I do feel we ought to express our thanks to Mr. Watson for the excessive amount of extra work he had to do following that meeting, and the clarity with which he was able to record useful minutes, which has been greatly valued. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. It's a general thing that I can't thank Mr. Watson enough for all of his help and support. So an extra thank you is wonderful. So just coming back to the piece about the leader was going to come back. Was he going to come back through scrutiny or come back directly to the performance panel?
I think the leader agreed to discuss it with officers first to see, because we didn't want to make extra work unnecessarily, but we believed that there was already data available on some of the items we raised that just could be pulled down. So there's going to be a discussion with the officer team in the first instance, and then
I think I probably wanted confirmation that these requests had the support of the scrutiny committee, but yes, I will be talking to officers anyway.
Thank you. If that can be fed back to all of us, that would be really helpful afterwards. Okay, so the performance panel met on the 15th of February. We've got the report in front of us. Does anybody have any questions on this report? Any debate on this report? Then I'd like to thank you all for meeting and giving us due diligence, as you always do. And just note, perhaps it might be worth, as per my original opening part, just Councillor Horrell, Councillor Cutler and I discussing the way forward, some timings and the like. Would it be useful to have an officer?
Oh, I think really Dawn is the. I'm so very sorry. I was reviewing the performance indicators. Dawn Adey has taken on this brief for us during our changing in director team, but Sharon Evans will be the lead officer from now on. So I suspect that a conversation between the 5 of you would be helpful.
Thank you very much. So that we've all agreed that that's been discussed. And I believe that's everything on our agenda tonight. Let me just go to the bottom just to double check. Yeah, that's it. So that concludes the formal business this evening. Sorry it's a late one. Safe drive home. Hope it's not too icy. Many thanks.